All right, so I'm going to address a few questions that I've been getting, and this is like a reoccurring thing. So I wanted to just make a video because I don't mind answering questions ever, but I think there's a little bit of misconception when it comes to Tom's guitar tone for a lot of the Blink videos that I've done, and trying to emulate that Enema sound. That sounds ridiculous out of context, but when you're doing like a Blink style tone, especially Enema the State, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, recording wise, not live, a lot of people will assume, okay, I got to get the gear, right? Which is important. Settings are important, but studio stuff is completely different than live. Tom wasn't using a lot of the live stuff that he would use in the studio. And even if he were, in post-production, there's a lot of EQ added, reverb, whatever, editing. There's all kind of stuff that happens. So if you're trying to play along to Blink songs or just get the sound even, you don't really want to worry too much about the settings. You do want to consider the settings, but context is really important. And so I just want to talk a little bit about that. A lot of people have commented asking for the settings in the videos where I was using the Mesa Dual Rec and this guitar. Some people have said, oh, I have that amp, or I have that rig, or I have the guitar, I can't get the settings, or I have this amp and I can't get the settings, or I did some with my PV, with my 6505, where people are like, how did you get that Blink tone out of that amp? And I'm like, while gear is important, it's more or less understanding what you're looking to dial in, and what you're doing it with is just, those are your tools, right? It's kind of like you can drill a screw into a wall to hang up a whatever. You're going to use any brand drill. You just have to know if it's this much power, this whatever, like you have to know how to use it. So knowing how to use your gear is important. When it comes to Blink's Enema tone, again, I can't not smile at that sentence. You're gonna, and excuse my studio monitors are just getting picked up by my phone, so it's not like I'm doing a mix here, but you want that full sounding power chord and picked note. Almost sounds high gain, but then when you're muting it, you're kind of cleaning it up. Has some saturation on there. But when Jerry Finn, the late great Jerry Finn, would record, especially with Blink, he really knew what he was doing, right? So Tom's recordings, once they found out whatever sound they were going to use per song or whatever, were done with him, I'm sure, envisioning, okay, this is going to sit, in the mid-range here in the final mix. So the bass is going to go right under it, and then, it's going to make this full sound. That's exactly how Enema sounds to me. If you listen to, like just Dumpweed or any song, but right off the bat, Dumpweed, it sounds so powerful, but it's that bass is really filling out that low end. So a lot of times I feel like people mistake like a full sound for a highly distorted sound, a modern rock sound or whatever. That, and don't get me wrong, I'm no genius. I'm not great at recording. I've just been doing stuff in that world for a long time, or I've been around it. So I kind of start to pick things up. And it's easy to mistake, okay, this tone is real distorted, and he's using mesas and an invader, so it's off the bat, that's like, oh, it's like a metal thing, right? But it's really more of a mid-range crunch where you can get a lot of saturation. So when you ring the notes, sorry, it's a loud tune. It sounds really distorted, but then, if you choke up enough and use your hand the right way, your picking hand is really important here. It's clean and it sits nice, and the bass will fill it out. A lot of times it's real cliche to say, oh, the tone's in your fingers, right? And people say that about like Van Halen and Dimebag and all these shredders in your left hand. That may be true, but I think for Tom, your picking hand is where a lot of the tone is, because if you have the right sound dialed in, that's half the battle. But even with this tone, if I'm slacking off and kind of sitting farther back on the bridge and palm muting, you're getting that. It doesn't sound right. But when you choke up a little bit and you kind of dig in and have real precise down picking, you don't have to down pick. It's gonna sound different. I'm lazy these days and don't do it as much as I used to. but I also don't really, my bands don't sound like Blink, so you kind of adapt, right? But I think it's important to realize how you should be playing the songs if you're trying to get that sound or play those songs the right way, and then look at your gear and say, okay, I have this kind of guitar, I have this kind of amp. If I want it to sound like Enema of the State, where do my settings go? Because if you're using like a Mesa, Mesas have so much bottom end, right? You want to take a lot of the bottom end out, even some of the mid-range out. You need a lot of high end, especially with this pickup, which is so bassy, the Seymour Duncan Invader, because otherwise you're going to get this real boomy sound. Excuse me, too, I'm a little coarse. But if you're using like a Marshall or a PV, there's a lot more like mid-range. And then your guitar cabinet, I'm using a Helix right now, so it's just not even the same thing. But you can have a solid state 15 watt practice combo amp and dial in something that's playable for Blink, you know, or you don't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. Conversely, there's plenty of people who do spend thousands of dollars and they can't dial it in to save their lives. I mean, some people can't even, you know, Mesas are hard, they're temperamental. I've played so many shows with bands using rectifiers where they can't dial them in to get even something usable for whatever they're playing. It's either way too boomy or it's so shrill and hot, too much top end, that it doesn't cut through the mix the right way, like in the mid range, and it just like either pierces your ears or kind of disappears into thin air. It's a challenge, you know. But I think with this, you know, and I'll tell you guys some stuff about my settings if you're with me here still this far into the video. Sorry for the rant, but it's really not too much about your settings until you understand not just the play style, but how to play with the gear that you have, you know. To me, it's like I play Blink for fun. They're my favorite band because they were my favorite band growing up that got me into music. But like in my real music life or whatever, it's like I play in bands that don't sound like Blink. I write music that doesn't sound like that just because that's where I evolved over the last 15 years or whatever. So it's really just not practical for me to go, well, I'm going to go buy all stuff to just sound like this and then, you know, not be able to use it for my other stuff. So if you're somebody like that, or maybe you just don't want to spend the money, or maybe you're just starting out or whatever, you need to kind of figure out how to use what you have and dial it in, and then just play, you know, mute, choke up a little bit, let those notes ring, and play clean. It's really just about that, you know, choking up and muting clean, and then knowing how to play the songs. So the settings I have here, I have like a JCM 800 pulled up, like a model. The Mesa model and Helix is very temperamental as well, and it was too boomy. So to match up with Enema stuff, I don't know, just maybe that's the post-production EQ on the record, but my real Mesa that I had did it pretty good, but I didn't really feel like messing with this too much. So I got the 800 with the drive at 4.5, so under halfway. That's your gain or your distortion. The bass I have at 2.4. The mid I have at 3.4, and the treble I have at 6.2. Presence is 7, and then there's volumes. The reason, so I have a lot of that bass taken out and some of the mid, but the reason is I have an overdrive over it, right? So in front of the amp, I have a tube overdrive. It's like a studio tube overdrive. In the overdrive, I have the bass and the mid. The mid's right at the same with the treble, like a little bit over halfway, and then I have the bass about a little over a third of the way. And it's kind of bringing out more of the mid-range, but keeping the tone that I originally dialed in. So sometimes it's like if you have an overdrive pedal, you can use it to kind of boost your signal or boost your, you know, clean stuff up a little bit, but keeping the tone that you dialed in. It's sort of hard to explain, but I'm not an expert, like I said, but it can help if you have the right, you know, if you're using it in the right context. I have a little bit of compression on there before, you know, everything starts, and then I just have in the chain, then I have noise gates on because it's real noisy otherwise. It's something you need. And then the IR I'm using is just a Mesa cab, nothing crazy. Again, you guys aren't hearing this in a mix, so if you're just hearing it from my phone mic, you might think it sounds like total garbage, and it probably does, but I think I dialed in something good enough for the video where you can tell it's like That's that kind of sound. And it sounds kind of weird if you don't think about it in the context of the whole record. You're like, it doesn't sound right. But it's like, yeah, but that's the guitar, you know, the bass is filling that out. There's room for everything else to breathe, whether it's the drums or the vocals, or there's a lot of keyboards hidden in those Blink songs that people don't hear because they're just really there to fill stuff out. So what I would suggest, you know, after you guys kind of, if you're looking to dial this in, once you have a guitar with the pickup you need, get something that's a nice sounding pickup, that's humbucker in the bridge, high output. Don't have to have this guitar. You know, I have a super distortion DiMarzio in my Jazzmaster. Does the job perfect. Other guitars as well. You're gonna want, I mean, if you can get like a good sounding amp, that's really whatever you think is sounding good. Tube amp, you know, head and cab combo, modeler, whatever it is. You're gonna want to pick what you have out that you like, that you're gonna use for everything you're gonna play, and then, you know, take some of that bass out if it's too low end, and kind of have the treble up, boost it a little bit, and then it's really just in your right hand. Now again, there's probably going to be people who watch this who are like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about or whatever, and that's fine. I don't claim to be any type of expert, but I did want to address this because I had so many people asking me for my settings, and at this point I'm like, this is 3-4 years ago, whatever. I'm like, some of them even longer. I'm like, I don't remember my settings because at the time I dialed it in, kind of shot it out, played a little bit. I was like, it's good. Like, I'm not like super set on it has to be on this, because the room that you're going to be in is where you're at in the walls and the shape of the room and other objects in the room. That's going to affect how your stuff sounds, how your amp sounds, how you're hearing things, where you are in comparison to your gear. If it's recorded, that's a whole nother world. So a lot of times, like how you guys might have heard my videos, I didn't hear them originally when I was playing. My amps sounded different, and then how the video sounded before I uploaded them, and they probably got more compressed, they sounded different. So, you know, audio is super contextual and relevant to every individual situation. You know, like if you take your phone and you plug it into your car stereo, the same song is going to sound different in your car than it does in your headphones, your earbuds, your AirPods, or in your iHome, or through the phone speaker. That's just the way things go. So I would say don't be too worried about the settings have to be on this number or at this place. Just really focus on, okay, my gear sounds like this, and this is how I have to get it to there, and the playing is number one. So that's just a little rant. I just wanted to talk about that because so many people were commenting, and I'm like, still getting them today, or messaging me or finding me on, and I'm like, hey, I do not mind answering questions at all. I enjoy it, but I want to kind of put that out there that the number one thing is playing and just knowing how to dial stuff in based on what you have. You don't have to go out and buy certain gear. Trust me, I mean, I do all kind of covers for whatever for fun, and I don't have the gear that some of these guys use because I'm just doing them for fun. I'm not in those bands. So anyways, I hope this might have answered some questions for people commenting, and if you watch this video, thanks. I appreciate a thumbs up or a comment or a subscription, but either way, if you have any other questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.